Welcome to part 4 everyone, the final chapter of the Hobart Parks challenge. By now you know that I was attempting to visit every single park, reserve and playground in Hobart in a single day, and it has to be said, things had been going pretty smoothly with only the occasional hiccup. Before we get back into it, a quick update. By this point of the ride, I had visited 71 of the 104 parks and had ridden just under 60 kilometres, with less than 15 kilometres remaining and still with 3 hours of winter daylight remaining. I would have to navigate the CBD and the waterfront, the narrow streets of Battery Point, the hustle and bustle of Sandy Bay Road, along with some gravel tracks and quiet roads. Stick around to find out if I can make it to park number 104 before the end of the day. At the end of part 3, I described the CBD as presenting a number of challenges for myself. My lack of a bell on the bike meant every pedestrian I came up behind would hear me yelling out instead.
Excuse me.
My next challenge was predicting when the lights would go green at Evans Street. The waterfront was quiet, and my only real concern as I rode alongside Davy Street was whether or not the pedestrian lights would stay green.
Stay green. Stay green on me. Thank you.
Next up in the list of parks, the most centrally located park in Hobart. Franklin Square was ticked off as I admired the cheekiness of this seagull before pushing on, using the pedestrian crossing at the Murray and Davy Street intersection. I took advantage of the break in traffic and rode on the road here, before peeling off less than a minute later into another centrally located park. I enjoyed the grandeur of St David's Park, but decided to ride through it without stopping.
Oh crap, staircase. Alright, on the grass. This looks muddy.
Once onto the cobblestone style road that is Salamanca Place, I made my way down to the next park, which I need to do a bit of explaining about.
Well, as you can probably tell, this is Parliament Lawns or Parliament Gardens, whatever it's called. It was actually a last minute addition to the list because initially I thought, oh, this is managed by the state government, and it is when it comes to hosting events, but the council still does the bin changing, the emptying the bins and the pruning, the gardening, so technically that's on the list, so yeah.
The now retired Aurora Australis was birthed nearby as I returned to Salamanca Place and got caught up in a bit of traffic. Once out of it, I veered onto the Salamanca Lawns, my next park to tick off. Just nearby lay the COVID-19 drive-in testing facility, which I had not seen.
Enough hanging out near the COVID-19 area. We might be free of COVID-19 in Tasmania at the moment.
The COVID distractions on Castray Esplanade meant I didn't take the time to appreciate the lovely Salamanca Place, and in no time at all I was climbing away from the famous area and up into my first stop in the historical suburb of Battery Point.
Prince's Park is quite a good spot here in Battery Point. Good playground which I went to a few times when I was younger, and obviously the nice lawns which overlook the harbour. Down here I've got to take. So far all the staircases I've come across, I've had to come up them. This is a change.
Is descending a staircase a luxury? Regardless, it led me down into a car park and I was able to easily ride across to the next park.
Welcome to AJ White Park. It's not really much here, it's mainly concrete instead of grass, isn't it? I remember eating fish and chips here one time.
I then had to return to Hampton Road, which involved a bit of uphill riding. I was then required to make a right-hand turn onto Arthur Circus, where its namesake park was located within a picturesque street.
Arthur Circus, it's a nice little place, small houses, good location though, and historic suburb, so yeah, it'd be pretty good to live here.
This was park number 78, marking 3/4 of the parks visited. Without any further ado, I was back out of there, returning briefly to the narrow strip of asphalt that is Hampton Road, before making a left-hand turn onto Francis Street to tick off the small little place that is Henslow Park. My next stop from here was by the water's edge, and I was able to utilise Colville Street, Trumpeter Street, and then the small Derwent Lane to reach it.
Purdon and Featherstone Reserve. Just some grassy areas on the waterfront, and the only piece of play equipment isn't in use anymore. But I've never been to this one before, even though I've been in Battery Point quite a few times. Or quite a lot, I should say. Oh, come on. You can get up this.
Words of encouragement to myself drove me upwards to Napoleon Street. A cluster of vehicles passing by meant I opted to stay on the footpath over to my next stop. The Napoleon Street playground was occupied by a number of people, so I stayed long enough to film a short clip and then pushed on, heading back up the hill. As much as I would have loved to ride down the steep incline further along Napoleon Street, there were a handful of parks I had to make a detour of sorts to visit. The first of these was located on DeWitt Street, which I accessed via Cromwell Street.
I actually quite like St George's Park. I remember a few times when I had some classes at IMAS, I'd come up here, maybe with some others as well. We'd have lunch here. Yeah, I might have my last substantial break here actually, get a little bit of food into me before the last sort of 10, 11, 12 kilometres.
St George's Park is not listed on the council's website, and was one of the parks which I knew about, which alerted me to the fact that there were some missing locations I would have to hunt around for on Google Maps, as I described in part 1. I approached the St George's Terrace and Sandy Bay Road intersection, which marked 10 kilometres to go.
Isn't it?
Given I had so much time on my hands, I briefly considered checking out Barracks Terrace, which I'd ruled out of the park's list, as I also discussed in part 1. I decided not to though, and easily made it down to the next stop.
This is Buckley's Rest. Not really much here besides this.
The next park was located on the other side of Sandy Bay Road, and I had to wait a while before getting a chance to cross its busy lanes. A park of the minuscule variety was due for a visit.
And here's the next park. Jeez, it's tiny. Osborne Park, just says on the sign up there. Get a load of this. This is real small, isn't it? Well, let's go to the next one, hey.
From Osborne Park, I worked my way across to Quayle Street, a lovely street during autumn when all the leaves are dropping. being late June, however, the trees were looking a little bare. Nonetheless, I enjoyed the easy riding it offered before crossing over the mouth of the Sandy Bay rivulet to reach yet another park, which were coming thick and fast by this point.
Errol Flynn Reserve. Here we go. As far as I'm aware, from what I can tell from researching on the internet, that playground right there, it's all part of this whole Mariville Esplanade area. It's all these lawns and riding paths, they're all the same Mariville Esplanade Park. Pick that one off, it's 86. Yeah, I'm kind of rushing through here, but I'm kind of sick of getting off and on the bike. That was the good thing about the first half of the walk, of the ride. There were less parks, so you had less places to get off at, but in the back half they're really close together, so those two I've considered visited.
And there you go. There's my explanation of the Mariville Esplanade area. It was true though that I was starting to get a little weary with the constant on and off nature of the ride. But that was my fault for wanting to film and document the ride. Once I returned to Sandy Bay Road, I witnessed this.
Excuse me. Thank you.
And approached the turn off to Rest Point Casino.
I have to stop here, unfortunately.
It was a simple case of following the road southwards to reach another coastal park.
That's my next park, number 87, Derwent Water Beach Reserve. Just a small little beach here. Shame I can't just follow Sandy Bay Road the rest of the way. I've got to go back up towards Churchill Avenue to get a couple.
The couple of parks was actually a total of 6 parks. The first of these was Lower Queenborough Oval, which I had to backtrack along Sandy Bay Road to reach.
Lower Queenborough Oval.
I then proceeded up Nelson Road to reach a very small reserve I luckily discovered on Street View.
Is it fair to say that this is a pretty small reserve? I mean, yes, you've got some kind of gravestones or something like that there, including Andrew Inglis Clark, which the electorate is named after, the electorate of Clark. A few more down there, and my next park, number 90, is just there, Queenborough Oval.
Queenborough Oval was ticked off and I was into the 90s. From here I proceeded to follow a bush track up the gully. This area of bushland is Lambert Park and was another park for me to tick off.
God, look at this rocky God, I came in here for uni a couple of times doing some field work.
It was a narrow track in places and it took some concentration for an amateur rider like me.
Oh God, a bit of a damaged bridge here. Oh.
This wasn't actually a damaged bridge, rather it was my old nemesis in a staircase. Thankfully I soon returned to a larger gravel track and popped out on Churchill Avenue. Directly opposite me was another park for me to tick off.
No need for a huge detour. Check it out, I'm here already. No bikes allowed. Well, I'll just go up 5-10 metres and turn back.
With this cluster of parks ticked off, I followed Churchill Avenue uphill, which for someone who had just ridden over 60 kilometres was deceptively steep. I crested the hill just up from Waimea Heights Primary and began to drop back down again. I turned off at Macaulay Road and soon entered the relatively unknown park that is Macaulay Reserve.
There's the sign.
I only knew about this place after I went for a run through it a few months earlier. What surprised me is that it pops out at a gravel road surrounded by bushland. It really didn't feel like I was riding through the middle of Sandy Bay. The asphalt soon returned and I was able to work my way across to Manning Avenue, where I proceeded to ride gently downhill, returning to Sandy Bay Road in the process and reaching my next park.
Just 10 parks to go.
Yep, that's it. Only 10 parks remained and I still had 1 hour and 40 minutes till sunset and less than 5 kilometres to ride. Just a hop, skip and a jump down the road and lay my next stop.
Here's number 95. Red Chapel Reserve.
More easy riding continued past Red Chapel Reserve, and at Sandy Bay Infant School I passed a staircase that led me down to Nutgrove Beach and a grassy area with some benches. I initially had this spot on the list of parks, but as I'll explain a little further down the track, I decided not to. I turned off onto Nutgrove Avenue and dropped down into the coastal area of Lower Sandy Bay. I was about to enter yet another cluster of parks. First stop, Sandown Park.
Okay, this is Sandown Park in Lower Sandy Bay, and it's funny because there's actually 2 different ovals, and on the Hobart Council website the 2 different ovals were 2 different parks. So this is Sandown Park 1, just there, and then if I run across to here, this oval is Sandown Park 2. So that's another 2 parks down, takes me to 97.
The finish was nearing and I was rattling off the parks by this stage. It took me less than a minute to reach my next stop. There was a bit of action going on at the Petonk Piss Day, so viewing this park from the sidelines would have to suffice. I spent some time riding on the car park access roads before working my way onto the concrete pathway that runs alongside Long Beach. Now for an explanation. This sign I just passed has Nutgrove and Long Beach written on it. This may well be an incorrect assumption on my behalf, but I took that to mean that both beaches were located in the same reserve. Therefore, that park I mentioned earlier, which is part of Nutgrove Beach, would technically fall under this same park I was now riding through. And it was busy. Many people wandering the beach as the late afternoon sun shone through. With 99 parks visited, I continued to follow the popular coastal path right through to the 100th park.
Right, Blinking Billy Point Reserve, my 100th park. Just 4 to go. 4 to go, not 3.
After no celebrations whatsoever, I was hopping back on the bike and using this shortcut I found to return to Sandy Bay Road. It was less than a minute later when I was required to get off the bike again and tick off park number 101.
Alright, Alexandra Battery is where I am now. Obviously this is a bit of a historical place, was in heavy use during World War II. So yeah, I guess it's just the ruins that are left now.
I was well and truly onto the home stretch now, with only 2 kilometres remaining. I had ridden along here many times, as I would occasionally ride to school back in my Taroona High days. Back then though, the bike lane didn't start until you reached Taroona, so we made a nice change to have a dedicated area for cyclists.
I do remember a truck coming very close to me around this point. Would have been, probably half a metre, possibly closer.
By this point of the ride, the hills to my west blocked all afternoon sun, a sure sign that the daylight hours had not long to run. My third last park to visit was Pierce's Park, which overlooked the Derwent estuary.
2 to go.
Oh, it's less than a kilometre now. I'm so close. And you know what, I'm not as tired as I thought I'd be. I guess I've been getting off the bike a lot, you know, to film at the parks. It's not like I did it in one go non-stop.
These are some pretty fair statements that I made at the time. I was nowhere near as fatigued as I thought I would be. A minute or so on from these musings, I came to the penultimate stop.
The second last park, the last one, is literally just over there. But this is 103. I suppose we'll have a quick look, just for 30 seconds. Just a bushland area, isn't it? Let's finish this off.
It was starting to dawn on me as I rode the last 200 metres that I was going to do this. I was going to visit every single park, reserve and playground in a single winter's day and have an hour of daylight left.
Would you look at that?
Check it out. It's Cartwright Reserve, park number 104. So I've done it. I've managed to get to every single park in the Hobart City Council area, or managed by the Hobart City Council, in, well, about 8 hours, maybe a bit over 8 hours, 8 hours 20.
There was one downside to finishing ahead of schedule though.
Bad news is, my lift isn't going to be here for an hour. So yeah, guys, ride home. Quite possibly. Cheers. Thanks for watching these videos. Absolutely incredible day, really. Extremely demanding, but rewarding. This is going to go down well.
Once again, thanks so much for watching the Hobart Parks Challenge. The final length of the ride was 73.645 kilometres with over 1.7 kilometres of climbing. If anyone is interested in a little more detail around the route or research of the ride or anything else related, let me know in the comments. I'll see you next video.